Hi, this is Beersborn. Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to add the attack for our third enemy. Now, we did the movement in the last video, and it moves randomly. We're going to make it attack at random times also. We're going to make it do a projectile, and when the projectile shoots from our enemy, it's going to aim towards our character no matter where our character is on the screen. Now, to start with, I'm going to go into my layout. I'm going to add the attack animation into my third enemy. So let's double click. Let's go over to the animations window on the top right. I'm going to right click, add animation, and I'm going to go up to my folder and find the attack animation that I've exported for this enemy. Here it is. Now, there's a couple things I want to change. I want to name it first off. I'm going to name it attack. You can name it whatever you want as long as it's something that you recognize. I would also recommend checking the speed. If I preview this is pretty slow. So I'm going to turn the speed up. Now yours might be good at a speed of 5. Mine needs to be a little bit higher. It depends on how many frames you have in your animation. That's pretty good. We can leave it there. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to add an instance variable. I'm going to go over here, click on add new instance variable. We have one for direction. Let's add one for attack. Now this is going to be a Boolean, which is just a true false statement, right? When it's true, our enemy will attack. When it's false, our enemy won't attack. Good. Now let's head over to the event sheet. In the event sheet, so far what I have is these events, which as soon as the enemy is created, it starts a timer for a random amount of time, and that timer is called move. When the move timer runs out of time, then we have a random number generator for this instance variable called direction, right? It picks a random number from 1 to 4. Now we have this expression here, floor random 1, 5. That's what floor means is it only picks whole numbers, so no decimal places. Random, and then these numbers, 1 is the lowest number it can be, and 5 is up to but not including the highest number it could be. So floor random 5 would be 1, 2, 3, or 4 chosen randomly. And then from those numbers, we have different directions it'll move, left, right, up, and down. We're going to add a fifth one. So let's add a new event, go to enemy 3, go down to compare instance variable. We're going to say direction is equal to 5. We're going to make 5 the attack. I'm going to go to add action, enemy 3. We're going to set Boolean, attack true. I'm going to turn the attack to true. But actually, if we take a look at the statement here, it only picks random numbers between 1 and 4 right now. We need to adjust this a little bit. If I double click on my random number for the direction variable, I need to make this 1, 6 now. Because remember, that high number, it never includes that number. So 1, 5 would only be a 1 through 4. 5 would never be picked. So I want to do 1, 6. And now this will pick a whole random number between 1 and 5. Good. So we have a 1 in 5 chance of it attacking. Now we have to add an event to say what happens when attack is equal to true. So let's add event, go to enemy 3, scroll down to is Boolean instance variable set, and then attack. So when enemy 3 is attack, now we can decide what we want to have happen. There's a couple things I think we should put here for actions. The first is we probably want the attack animation to play, right? So let's add an action, go to enemy 3, and set the animation to attack. The other thing is, I think I want to disable the movement while it's attacking. I want my enemy to stop moving while it's attacking, and then it'll move again once it's finished. Now, if you want to have your enemy move while it's attacking, you don't have to put this next part in, but I think it usually looks better if the enemy pauses for a second to attack. So what I'm going to do is add an action for enemy 3, and this top section that's all about the 8 direction movement stuff, if I go to set enabled and turn it to disabled, I can turn off the movement. And then the third thing I want to do is while it's attacking, this timer is still running. So there's a chance that it might be halfway through its attack, and then the timer will pull up another random number, and all of a sudden it'll start moving to the left or something. So what we want to do is we want to disable the timers. We want to pause the timers while it's attacking. So let's add a third action. Go to enemy 3. Scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see pause, resume timer. Let's click on that. Now for this, it's asking you the tag. The tag is the name of the timer, and that's whatever you put in here. In the event where it says like start timer and then quotation marks with the name, I used move. You might have used the same name. So I'm going to type in quotation marks move and then state paused. Good. So whenever the attack comes up, starts attacking, stops moving, stops the timer. Now if we try that out, it should work. But once he starts attacking, he'll never stop attacking. Let me try that again. Moves. Starts attacking, and he just attacks in a loop. And the reason why is because we have to say that when the attack is finished, it has to go back to enabling the movement and starting the timers. So we're going to add another event. We're going to go to enemy 3, and we're going to use on finished. Now, on finished is when an animation is done, right? And the animation we're going to check to see is finished is the attack animation. When the attack animation's finished, then we can do a couple things. One is we want to turn attack to false, right? When it attacks once, it's done. Let's go to set Boolean and turn the attack to false. It's done attacking. But we also want to re-enable the 8 direction movement. So I'm going to add action, go to enemy 3, go to set enabled for the 8 direction section, and enable it. The third thing I'm going to do is start the timer again. I want to resume the timer. So I'm going to add action, go to enemy 3, go down to pause, resume timer. And again, you have to name it the name that you used here. And I'm going to state resumed. Great. Now there's one last action I'm going to add in here. Right now, it finishes attacking and it can move again and starts the timer again. But that timer could take, maybe half a second before the next number is picked. I'm going to add another line for this event that chooses 1, 2, 3, or 4 right after the attack is finished. So as soon as the attack animation is complete, it goes back to moving in a specific direction. To do that, I'm just going to take the same thing that I used for the timer and put it here. This set direction to floor random 1,6. We can type it out. You can actually right-click and copy it, and then right-click down here and paste it. But I'm going to type it out anyway, just because it's good practice. So the last action I'm going to add is for enemy 3. I'm going to set the value of direction to floor, which means only whole numbers, parentheses, random, parentheses, 1, which is the minimum number, and then comma. And if we want to include the attack, so maybe it can attack twice in a row, we'll do 6. If you wanted to only attack once and then go back to moving every time, you could do 1,5. I think I'll do 1,6. And then parentheses, and a second parentheses for the floor. Good. Let's click done. Now if we test it out, he should move around, and then occasionally he'll attack, and then he'll go back to moving around. So there's a 1 in 5 chance every time the timer's up that it'll go to an attack. Now he's attacking a lot, so I might make this set direction floor random 1,5. That makes him so he can't attack more than once in a row. Every time he finishes attacking, he'll go back to a movement number afterwards. That's pretty good. Okay. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to make a projectile for him to shoot, right? Now to do that, we have to actually make an object for that projectile, which means we're going to need a sprite of just the projectile we want our enemy to shoot. So that means we're going to go back into Piskel and we're going to make a sprite of our projectile. Now I've already made one. I'm going to open it up here. Let's see. Fly projectile. I've just made a simple red sphere, right? I added some animation to it so it kind of flashes. You can add whatever you want here. It can be a complex animated projectile. It can be a simple red circle. We can always change it later too. Now let's go back to our layout. We're going to make a new object, and this new object is going to be the projectile for our enemy. So I'm going to right click anywhere in the empty white space and hit insert new object. I'm going to scroll down to sprite. I'm just going to click on it once so I have a chance to enter in the name. I'm going to call this enemy 3 projectile. Now that's a pretty long name. If you want to name it something shorter, feel free to. Enemy 3 projectile. I'm going to click insert. I'm going to click anywhere in my white space. I'm going to go up to the folder that's on the top left and find that projectile that I just created and exported. Great. Now, if you have an animation in there, you can loop it if you want it to loop over and over again. You can test the speed if you want. If it's just a single frame, then don't even worry about that. That's all set up. Let's close that. And now we have our projectile. So now let's head over to our event sheet. What we're going to do is we're going to make it so that when the attack animation is playing for enemy 3, we're going to make it spawn the enemy 3 projectile. So let's add an event. Let's go to enemy 3, and let's go to is playing under the animation section. Now the animation we want to check for is the attack animation. So when attack is playing, let's add an action, enemy 3, spawn another object. And the object that we're going to spawn is the enemy 3 projectile. Now this will work, but it'll spawn a whole bunch of the object. It'll spawn it right in the middle of your sprite at the very beginning of the animation, and the projectile is not going to go anywhere. It'll just sit right there. What we need to do is we need to make it so it comes out from the right position on our sprite of our enemy 3 and also at the right time, and we need to make the projectile move. Let's start by making the projectile move. To do that, we're going to add a behavior to our enemy 3 projectile. The behavior that I'm going to use is over here in the new behaviors, bullet. We've used bullet before for a couple different things. We're going to use it again here for the projectile. Now, once you've selected bullet, the window over here on the left has a speed. You can change the speed to whatever you want. That's how fast it's going to move. The rest of the stuff we can probably leave alone for now. Set angle will rotate your sprite, and depending on what your sprite is, you might want to leave that on. We can always check that out later. Let's try it out, and let's see if the projectile moves. So it does move, but it makes like a huge train of projectiles, right? And it's also always shooting the projectiles to the right. So we need to fix a couple of these things. First, let's make the projectile come out from exactly where we want the projectile to be in our enemy's animation. If I double click on my enemy and I go to the attack animation, from frame 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, he's just kind of charging up, right? And then at frame 5 is when he actually like spits out the projectile. Yours is going to be different. It just depends on what kind of animation you created. But what I want you to take note of is which frame number do you want the projectile to come out on? Because right now it's just coming out on frame 0. And for mine, it's going to come out on frame 5 to make sense, right? Yours might be a different number. But take note of which number, which frame of the animation you want the projectile to appear on. Mine's 5. So I'm going to go back over to the event sheet, and I'm going to add a new condition to this event by clicking on the far left tab. Double click. I'm going to go to enemy 3. I'm going to go to compare frame under the animation section. And the frame that I'm going to use for me is 5. You're going to put in whatever number frame you think is the best for when your projectile should appear. Now that should help a little bit, but it's still going to make too many of them because it sticks on frame 5 for maybe half a second, and that whole time is just making projectiles. So there's still maybe 5 or 6 projectiles being made. We can make just one come out by adding another condition over here. If I double click and I go to system this time, I can scroll down to the part that says trigger once while true. Trigger once means just have this thing happen once. Even if these things are true for a while, we'll make this just happen a single time. And now it'll shoot a single projectile. Good. Now let's make it come out of the exact right spot. Now for mine, I want it to come out at the end of my fly's like proboscis, right? Its big floppy nose. So I'm going to use image points for that. If I go to the layout I'm going to double click on my enemy, and I want to go to the attack animation. Now find the frame that you want to have your projectile come out on. Mine's frame 5. And what I'm going to do is go to this tool right here, the little like crosshairs, and I'm going to right click to add a new image point. I'm going to call this new image point attack, because this is where the attack is going to come from. Now, if you right click on this, you can hit apply to whole animation, and that'll put your attack hit point on all the different frames of it. You don't actually have to do that. If you're on the right frame already, you don't have to, but I think it's easy to make that a little bit more flexible. So I usually apply it to the whole animation. And then what I want to do is move this little red box to where I want the projectile to come out from. Make sure you're on the attack image point and not on the origin point. If you move the origin point, that'll change the alignment of your character and it'll start jumping around and acting weird. So you want to make sure you have the attack image point selected and move it just where you want it to be for that frame. Now, if I try playing it, the projectile should come out from the end of his nose. Oh, it doesn't yet. That's because I forgot one thing. Over here in the event sheet, I have to go back to where it says spawn enemy 3 projectile. If I double click on that, it gives me the option to choose which image point I want to have the projectile spawn from. Now to set this up so the projectile comes from the right image point, we can use the name that we just created. And the name that we created was quotation marks, attack, quotation marks. Good, click done. Now let's try it. Good, see it comes right from the end of his floppy nose. That's good. But no matter where he is and no matter where my main character is, the projectile always just goes to the right? We need to fix that. So let's fix that next. We're going to add an event. And for this, we're going to use the enemy projectile. And I'm going to go down to where it says on created. On created means that this is going to take effect as soon as the projectile is created, as soon as it's spawned. What we're going to do is we're going to add an action for enemy 3 projectile, and we're going to go down to the bullet category. Now in here, you'll see one that says set angle of motion. If I double click on that, I can set the angle, which is like the direction. Now we're going to type in kind of a long string of things here. What I'm going to type in is a function that directs the projectile towards the location of where your main character is at the split second that it's created. And to do that, I'm going to type in the following. I'm going to type in angle, and then I have to type in a parentheses, and you can see here it kind of gives you a hint. It has to be x1, y1, x2, y2. What that means is the location of your projectile to the location of your main character. So I'm going to start by typing in the word enemy 3 projectile and then .x. So the enemy 3 projectile's x location, comma, enemy 3 projectile .y. So that'll track where the x and y coordinates of the enemy projectile is when it's created. Then I'm going to do comma, and then the name of our main character. Now I named my main character just to make it easy, but whatever your main character, your player character's name is, type that out, .x, comma, main character's name, .y, and then a closed parentheses. So it's angle enemy 3 projectile x, enemy 3 projectile y, main character x, main character y. Now, if I've done that correctly, it should aim towards my character no matter where he is on the screen. Now see, I can still dodge it. Like it comes towards me, but it's not gonna follow me. If you wanted to, you can make it follow the player. I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But it works. Now the only thing I think is kind of weird here is that my enemy, even if he's facing towards the right, the projectile still shoots towards the left if I'm to the left of him, right? That's fine, but I think it would look better if we make it so that the enemy faces whatever direction the player is when he shoots his projectile. So let's add that in now. And that's a pretty easy fix. What I'm going to do is add another event. I'm going to go to enemy 3. And I'm going to check to see when it is attacking. So we can do a is Boolean instance variable set and attack. So if it is attacking, I'm going to add another condition to this one. I'm going to go to enemy 3, and I'm going to go down to compare X. Now we've used this before. What we can do with compare X is we can say if its X is greater than, and X means it's like its location left and right on the screen, then our main character's X, and again, main character is just whatever the name you've used for your player character. I called mine main character, but yours is going to be the name that you used, .x. What that means is that if our enemy is on the right side of our character, then we can add an action for enemy 3, and we can set it to either be mirrored or not mirrored. Now we have to just kind of trial and error this. I think my enemy by default is facing towards the left, so if it's on the right side of my player, I want it to be not mirrored. I would recommend just guessing here, and we could try it out and see if it works. I'm going to do the same thing here, but reversed. So I'm going to add an event for enemy 3. I'm going to go to is Boolean instance variable set for attack. I'm going to add another condition for enemy 3, compare X, and this time I'm going to do less than main character dot X. And on this one, I'm going to go enemy 3 mirrored. So if the X is greater than the main character's X, it's not mirrored. If the X of my enemy is less than the main character's X, it is mirrored. Now let's try that out. So no matter which direction it's facing, it should always flip to face me when it attacks. Good. It works. Now, if yours is reversed, you just need to change these two things. Flip the mirrored and not mirrored. So if yours is always facing away from you when it attacks, just reverse these two. Excellent. Now there's one last thing I want to add here. When the projectile flies off the screen, we want to destroy it, because right now that projectile is just going forever. And it doesn't really matter for a simple game like we have right now, but the computer's keeping track of all those things. And as our game gets more complicated, we don't want that extra drain on the memory. So I'm going to add one last event. We're going to go to enemy 3 projectile, and we're going to scroll down to the bottom here where you see the option for is outside layout. Now, what is outside layout means is that if the object goes outside of the boundaries of the game, then we can make something happen. So let's click on that. And the action that we're going to use is we're going to take our enemy 3 projectile and we're going to destroy it. As soon as it leaves the boundaries of the game, it's destroyed. Now, you can test that out. If you want to take your projectile, it's probably still in the layout. If I start the game, it's just kind of firing towards me instantly, we can drag this projectile out up here into the gray area. And if I hit play, it should just instantly be destroyed, so it won't come shooting at us. And now whenever any of these projectiles go outside of the layout of the game, they're instantly destroyed. All right, works pretty good. Now let me show you one last thing. And this is not required, but I think it's kind of fun and it could come in handy later. Say you want the projectile to always follow your player, like a homing missile, right? Even if you move, the projectile is still going to follow your location. We can change this event right here. The one where it says enemy 3 projectile created, and then we set the angle. If we change this from on created, if I hit back and go to system instead, and I find every tick, what every tick means is every split second of the game, then we can make it track your character's angle and follow its location. So now the projectile is going to be like a homing projectile, right? It's going to chase me. Now, do we want to keep this in the game for this enemy? You can if you want. It's very difficult because those projectiles are just going to constantly chase my location. So I think it works a little bit better to instead use what we had the first time, which is just enemy 3 projectile on created. But you can always use that if you want. Okay, let's do some organization. Now we haven't made a group for this, so I'm going to right click in the white area. I'm going to go to add group. I'm going to call this enemy 3. I'm going to start moving some of this stuff into that group. Now, if you want to make subgroups for everything, you can. Like if you want to right click and do a subgroup for enemy 3 movement and take just the movement things that we created in the previous video, you can put those in there. So I want to do another subgroup for enemy 3 attack and take the stuff that we made today and put that in there. You can do that, and now it's all nice and organized. We'll leave it there today. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.